The house had been in their family for generations. Since he was a child, David had been spending every summer there with his parents. But when he moved into the house permanently after his father passed away, it didn't take long for him to notice strange things happening. For example, he kept hearing noises coming from beneath the floorboards at night. He told himself it was just some wild animals, but then he started to hear footsteps. Was there someone living under his house? And what did they want? It was an old farmhouse situated out in the middle of nowhere, a place where time seemed to have stood still. The interior hadn't been renovated since David's grandfather was still alive. It was filled with old furniture and trinkets that no one really used anymore. But it had always felt like a safe and comforting place to be. That was until this year. Ever since he moved in, strange things started happening. Sometimes he would wake up in the middle of the night and hear what sounded like footsteps pacing back and forth in the room directly above his bedroom. It was always the same 3 steps. Pause. 3 steps. Pause. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't convince himself that it was just some wild animals. There had to be another explanation. His first thought was that perhaps his aging mother was still walking around in her sleep, even though she slept in the guest room downstairs. But then he started to hear the footsteps during the daytime, too. And then one morning he woke up and found one of the floorboards directly above his bed had come loose. It had made a big creaking sound when he stepped on it. So, how could he have possibly missed that before? He took a crowbar and pried the floorboard up and looked underneath the floorboards, but all he could see was a dark, dusty abyss. He tried shining a flashlight down there, but the beam didn't reach very far before being swallowed by the darkness. What was down there? More importantly, why were the floorboards making so much noise? David decided to bring in a professional to help him figure out what was going on. He called a local handyman named Joe, who lived over in a neighboring town. As a handyman, he had seen it all, so nothing about the house really impressed him at first. However, when he heard the story about the floorboards, he actually started to look somewhat intrigued. He went into the bedroom where the floorboard had been creaking and bent down next to the hole to inspect it. Using a flashlight, he shined the light into the opening and said, "Well, I'll be damned." David asked him what he meant, but Joe didn't answer him right away. Instead, he got up and went over to the closet and pulled out an old rocking chair. He sat down in it and started to rock slowly back and forth. Then he started humming a tuneless song. This freaked David out. Was Joe pretending to be crazy? Or was he actually crazy? Was he saying that there was something down there in the floorboards? David felt a growing sense of dread. He wanted to know what was under there, but at the same time he was scared to find out. Joe stopped rocking and spoke to David again. "Your house has a very interesting history," he said, but he didn't say anything else. David pressed him for more information, but Joe wouldn't tell him anything. He insisted that David needed to dig up the floorboards and find out for himself what was down there. With that said, he handed him a shovel and pushed him toward the closet. David hesitantly took the shovel. Why was this man acting so weird? Wasn't he supposed to fix the floorboards? Confused and unnerved, David grabbed the shovel and walked over to the closet. He opened the door and bent down to remove the floorboards. His fingers traced over the rough wood as he pried it up. The smell of dust filled his nostrils. As he continued digging, he could feel something solid beneath the floorboards, like there was some sort of object hidden underneath them. He brushed the dirt aside and discovered a metal box. It was quite heavy, as if it were filled with something. Could this be what had been making all the noise? Struggling to keep his cool, David wiped the sweat off his forehead and heaved the box out of the floor. It landed on the bed with a thud. What exactly was inside the box? He hesitated for a moment, then slowly lifted the lid. The musty smell of old paper filled his nostrils. Inside the box, David found stacks of yellowed letters tied together with a faded blue ribbon. He carefully untied the ribbon and reached in to pull out the letters. As he read through them, his eyes widened in surprise. Oh, they were love letters, each one more passionate than the last. But what really caught his attention was the handwriting. It was an elegant, looping script that seemed almost alien to David's modern sensibilities. He turned the letter over and saw that it was addressed to a woman named Eliza. But who was Eliza, and why had she been receiving these love letters all those years ago? David knew that his grandfather had lived in the house for most of his life. But before that, it had been his parents' home. Maybe they would know more about the box and its contents. So he called them up and told them to come over as soon as possible. When they arrived, David showed them the letters and asked if they knew anything about them or who Eliza was. His mother looked at the letters for a moment, then said, "Oh, those are just love letters from your great-grandfather to my grandmother. They must have fallen out of the floorboards when you removed them." "But how could they have been hidden in the floorboards for all this time?" David asked. His mother shrugged. "I don't know. Who knows how things get into floorboards anyway?" She reached down and picked up the box. "Why don't you put these back where you found them? It's probably best not to disturb the old house any more than we already have." David looked at the box in his hands, unsure what to do. He knew his mother was right, but at the same time, he couldn't help but feel curious about the mystery of Eliza and her secret admirer. He looked at his parents, then nodded slowly. "Okay, let's just put these back and leave the past in the past." With that said, they all went back to the bedroom where David had found the box. His parents watched as he replaced the floorboard and hid the box back where it belonged. All three of them were silent for a moment as they thought about the secrets that their old house was hiding. As David's parents were preparing to leave, his mother turned to him and said, "You know, it's probably best if you don't go digging around in the house anymore. Some things are better left undisturbed." And with that final warning, they all went back to the car and drove away. When David's parents left, he returned to his room feeling unsettled. He lay down on his bed and stared up at the ceiling, wondering what other secrets his house was hiding. Then suddenly, he heard a noise coming from directly above his head. It was the sound of footsteps. 3 steps. Pause. 3 steps. Pause. Was it just his imagination, or was someone really walking around on his roof? He decided to investigate, got out of bed and went to the window. Peeking outside, he saw that no one was there. Had he imagined it? As he turned to go back to bed, he heard it again. 3 steps. Pause. 3 steps. Pause. But this time it was coming from inside the house. David cautiously approached the window and looked out. His blood ran cold when he saw a dark figure standing on the roof directly above him. The figure seemed to be watching him intently through the window. David quickly pulled the curtains closed and backed away from the window. Who was the mysterious figure and what did he want? David didn't know it at the time, but he had just witnessed the beginning of a terrifying ordeal that would change his life forever. From that moment on, he could never escape the feeling that he was being watched. And the mysterious footsteps continued to haunt him, growing louder and more frequent with each passing day. What will David do next? Will he try to uncover the mystery of the footsteps? Or will he flee the house in terror? Only time will tell.